Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will begin with chapter 38, verse 24. Chapter 38, verse 24. A very famous story in this week's parsha is the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Very briefly summarized, Yehuda had three sons. He had a son who was married to Tamar, and the son died. And then there was a yibum type of thing done, what we call it a yibum or levirate marriage, that she married her brother-in-law, her deceased husband's brother, and then he died. Now we're taught that the reason why they died was because they had done something incorrect in terms of they wasted seed. It's a whole discussion in its own right. I don't want to get too far off topic. In any event, there was one more brother, and Tamar was in a sort of a strange limbo that on the one hand, it was considered inappropriate for her to, even though she was a widow, it was considered inappropriate for her to just marry a man from outside the family because there was some type of sort of connection to the family through her earlier marriage. But on the other hand, Yehuda actually was very reluctant to have his third son marry Tamar because he said these two sons married Tamar and they both died and he doesn't know what to make of it. So she was in this strange position, and she dressed as a harlot and waited and disguised herself and waited for him at a certain crossroads, and he had relations with her, and she became pregnant from those relations. Now, it's interesting because, again, this is before the giving of the Torah, so the technical modes of yibum, of levirate marriage, were not in play. This would not be an option today in the laws of levirate. We don't do levirate marriage today, but even in subsequent to the giving of the Torah would not be an option. But in a sense, she was acting within the spirit of levirate marriage because she sort of stayed in the family. She was with her father-in-law instead of her brother-in-law. In any event, they come to Yehuda and they say 3 months later, and then he went on his way, she went on her way. He didn't know who this woman was. And they come to him 3 months later and they say, your daughter-in-law is pregnant. And so to Yehuda, this means that she acted in an unfaithful way. He didn't know that she was the one. In any event, there's the famous end of the story is as she was. So he says she should be burnt. She should die by burning, which is very dramatic, of course. At the end of the day, she sent a message to him that was sort of code to make him understand that she was the harlot and he was the one who impregnated her. And to Yehuda's credit, he publicly admitted that he had had relations with her, which is obviously not an easy thing to do. And to Tamar's great credit, she would have allowed herself to die had he not admitted it. So it's a lot in this story. We could spend the next few weeks on it. But I want to focus on one technical point here. What's the grounds that she should die? What's his basis for saying that? And why this specific method of punishment? There is a punishment by burning. I don't want to get into details of how it works, but it's one of the punishments of Sanhedrin, of the Jewish High Court. But what's his grounds for doing this? And where's this coming from? Ramban on Pasuk Chav Daled. Vayomer Yehuda, and Yehuda said, Hotzi'ua v'sisaref. Take her out and she should be burnt. Amar Ephraim Maksha, Talmido shel Rameir, Mishum Rameir, Tamar Bito shel Shem Hoisa, Shu Kohen, Lefichach, Danua B'Sreifa, Zeh Kasav Rashi v'lo Pirsho. So the Ramban first cites Rashi. Rashi cites a medrash that says that Tamar was the daughter of a Kohen. So therefore, the halacha is when a daughter of a Kohen acts in an unfaithful manner sexually, she does have a unique punishment. That is the punishment of sreifa, of burning. Okay, so obviously there's a lot to be explained here. The Ramban jumps right in. I don't know what we're talking about. Shabbos Kohen the halacha that the daughter of a Kohen is killed in that way if she has sexual relations is specifically if she's married or betrothed to a man. This was not the case for this woman. This woman was in sort of like this quasi limbo, but it's not the same thing as that halacha. Hava bas Kohen shomeres yavam shezinsa eina b'misa klal. The daughter of a Kohen who's in this limbo regarding a levirate marriage, if she were to have relations with another man, you wouldn't kill her in this way. Ubein bas Israel, ubein bas Kohen eina ela b'lav greda. He says this halacha does not apply. He says you could say this or that. The Ramban says this is very difficult to understand. Skipping ahead a few lines. Venerally, Yehuda Katzin, Shoter Umo Shel Ba'aretz. Yehuda was a prominent person in the land. V'hakala asher tisnei alav, and his daughter-in-law, who clearly had relations with someone, and presumably was outside the family, which was not the case, but that's what it seemed to be. Eina nigdanas kimishpat shar hanashim. She has a special status. She's not like anybody else who in some way acted unfaithfully in a sense. She's held to a higher standard because her father has this very public position. That's why you would have said she should get punished in this way. What the Ramban says, why do you think they went and asked Yehuda what to do? The Ramban says because he was a macher. He was the one who was calling the shots in the town. It was like he was the king. So he says the idea is that he felt that she had disgraced her father, disgraced Yehuda's family, but this would not be the normal status. Also a difficult pshat to understand. Finally, says the Ramban, it's also possible just to say, he says the final possibility is maybe, again, this was before the giving of the Torah, this wasn't a Jewish society in the first place. Maybe the practice was that if a woman was unfaithful to her husband, the husband would decide what would happen to her. So in this case, she was like unfaithful to her husband's family. See who decided. I can't say I fully understand any of these ideas, but it's just interesting to have a little bit of a sense because people ask about this all the time. Okay. Really fast. Chapter 39, verse 14. Again, we're not going to do this justice either. The story of Yosef and the wife of Potiphar. The wife of Potiphar was Yosef's master. The wife of Potiphar has great desires for Yosef. She tries to have sexual relations with her. He rebuffs her and he flees. And she decides to paint it as that he tried to come upon her and she saved herself. And now look at verse 14. Vatikra l'anshei son. She called out to the members of her household. Vatomer lehem lemor, and she said to them, Ru'u hevilanu ish ivri l'tzachek bana. See that my husband brought to us a Jewish man to mock us. Boy elai l'shkavimi. This man, this Jew, Yosef, came to sleep with me. Ve'akra b'kol gadol, and I called out in a large way. I ask you, this is one of these questions through the generations. What word in this pasuk seems extra? I vote for Ivri. Why does it matter that he's a Jew? Her complaint is that she alleges that someone tried to rape her. What's the significance that he's a Jew? So I'm sure you've most of you know where we're going with this. Ramban and Pasuk Yudalef. V'tam re'u evilanu ish ivri. Says the Ramban, Kyo Ivrim Sonei Snue HaMitzrim Hema. The Egyptians hated the Jews. Lo yuchlu lechol itam lechem ki toivahi lahem. It was considered beneath the Egyptians to eat a meal with the Jews. Do you remember when Yosef ultimately becomes the viceroy of Egypt and he brings his family and they're eating separately than Paro and his attendants because they're Jews. says in the pasuk, it was disgraceful to the Egyptians to eat with the Jews. The Egyptians were happy to have the Jews work for them, but not to be members of their household or guests in their household. Amra. So therefore, the wife of Potiphar says, look at what my Meshugana husband did. He messed us up by bringing a Jew into our household and giving him this prominence in our household. And now he has the ability to mock us. Okay, so just, we think about anti-Semitism. We see, of course, in our times even how real of a thing anti-Semitism is. We basically have it on record here in the Chumash that there was anti-Semitism in Egypt too. Interesting to think about. Okay, jumping ahead, chapter 40, verse 8. Yosef ends up in prison because of the story with the wife of Potiphar, and he meets the butler and the baker, to loosely translate their terms, their positions, and he sees one morning that they clearly are disturbed. They're clearly agitated about something. Chapter 40, verse 8. So he asks, why are you so upset today? And they said to him, Chalom cholamnu, we had a dream, ufoser eino so, and there's no one who can explain the dream to us. Vayomer elhem Yosef, Yosef said to them, Halo lelukim pisronim. God knows the dream. God knows solutions. God knows what the meaning is of your dreams. Saprunali, why don't you tell me? Okay, basic question. What does one statement have to do with the other? Joseph said, God knows solutions to dreams. So why don't you tell me what your dreams were? Are you God? Just what's he saying to them exactly? Look at the second Ramban on Pasuk Ches. Second Ramban on Pasuk Ches. Halo lelukim pisronim. Piresh Rabbi Avram ki Yomar ki amikrim hoasidim lavo b'chalomos le'elukim heim. The Ibn Ezra says that what Yosef is saying to them is whatever will ultimately come of these dreams, whatever events might transpire in your lives, they're from God. If you're seeing the future, it's because God is allowing you to see the future through this dream. God makes peace, God creates evil. It's insignificant what I say to you. Because whatever I say to you, if God agrees, it's substantive because God thinks so. And if God doesn't agree, it's meaningless. So it doesn't matter what I say. So he says, the Ibn Ezra explains that what Yosef is basically saying to them is, look, I'm happy to talk about the dream, but you just need to know what you and I think the dream means is insignificant, and it's all from God. So it's not that if I tell you something you don't like, it's not that I'm making it happen. Maybe I'm correctly understanding what God is going to do. So don't shoot the messenger. But God is going to be the one who decides what this dream is and what the meaning is of the dream is. Okay, that's what the Ibn Ezra says. The Ramban says something else. Only God can understand what these dreams mean. So the Ramban says the pshat is, and I think what most people would assume it means. Ramban says that he's saying, look, God surely knows what your dream means. It could very well be that he'll share it with me. So let's give it a shot. So the Ibn Ezra says, I'm going to try to understand your dream, but just appreciate the results will not be based on what I do or don't say. It's based on what God thinks. So even if you don't like what I say, if I'm right, it's because that's what God wants. The Ramban says, maybe God will help me understand your dream. Why don't you try me out? So two different ideas. So we discussed this morning what the rationale would be, why Yehuda is saying that Tamar should be burnt. We discussed this quote, the wife of Potiphar referring to Yosef as a Jew. And we discussed two possibilities as what does Yosef mean when he says God is the one who has solutions.